Okay, we're gonna make these intake nacelles up now. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna put some tape across the mold so that we don't get paint and resin all over it. So I'm just gonna use some heavy masking tape for this. It's getting expensive these days doing these molds because of the cost of materials. It's ridiculous how much tape costs. And then I'm just going to come and trace around the perimeter of the mold here on a slight angle. There we go. Don't have to be perfect, but the better job we do, the better the finish as far as not putting paint all over the place. Okay, that was step one, which is just clean and get any dust off or whatever, and tape up the mold, I should say. Step two is we get the wax. This is Partol paste number 2 that I use. You can use any good quality wax. You can even use beeswax, but I know that this wax is compatible with my PVA or mold release agent, and it doesn't run or shrivel up or anything like that. So I just get a fairly liberal amount in there. In this case, I have to go pretty deep because of the deep cavity, and just get it in as far as you can. These molds are seasoned, so that means that they've had a few parts pulled on them. And doesn't need a whole crap load of wax. So because I've got these deep cavities, I'll show you there, right in there, I use these I forget what they call them. Anyhow, these things to get in there and make sure I get it along the edges and into any sharp corners. And another thing is where, because of these deep cavities and we've got the sharp inlet, I'm going to pressure release these molds. So I've got some valves in there. You can see these just regular tire valves. Okay, it's a couple of minutes later, so I'm just going to polish these molds a little bit. Nothing fancy. And then we're going to apply the PVA. And I normally spray the PVA with a airbrush, but because these are small parts and this is more a build for recording videos so you guys can see how I do stuff, I'm not really concerned about getting it perfect. All right, stage 3, applying the PVA. This is the PVA I use. Forget where I bought it from. Oh, I guess Fiberglass Supply Depot. I've transferred a little bit into one of these resin cups. This is the brush I like to use. Don't want to get too much on. So first thing I'm going to do is just go around the deep spots, because you really don't want to be disturbing the PVA by brushing back over it. So I've got the PVA in, as you can see, hopefully. It's shiny and it's wet right now, so I'm just going to hit it with the heat gun. Keeping my distance, because you can burn this stuff if you get too close and it'll shrivel up. So I'll just hit it quick. Take a couple of minutes and it'll all be cured. And the reason I'm using the heat gun is I did use a lot of PVA in the deep cavities there, and it can tend to sometimes run down. So I'm going to use the heat gun to make sure it's cured. All right, PVA is cured. So the next step is I'm going to just put some masking tape over these tire valve holes, and you only get one shot of this. Theoretically, I should be putting it on before I do the PVA so that it sticks. But what can happen is the actual tape can stick to the mold so hard that unless you're using, 200 psi, you can't actually blow it out. So I'm just going to do it in one shot. It will stick to the PVA like that. And you cannot adjust it or move it because it'll tear up the PVA. So all you can do is lay it down in one shot. And you need to put the tape, otherwise the resin gets into the valve stems. So now I'm gonna go out and take this outside and just give a quick spray of primer. I use in the US, I don't know if it's in the rest of the world, but I use a Rust-Oleum automotive primer. It's a high build primer, and I've used it for years and it works great for me. All right, I've put the primer on. I've not gone super heavy or anything. I just wanted to get it covered. You don't have to use primer. You can actually just lay up right into the mold itself. The glass part, when it's finished, will come out like semi-transparent, but you're going to end up with pinholes. It's inevitable you will end up with pinholes. That's why pretty much 99.5% of the time I always use a primer. You can also use the finish color you want to do the plane in. So let's say you wanted to do, I don't know, Blue Angels plane. You could spray this part in blue instead of the primer. And you got to just make sure that the paint is fully cured before you start laying up. So you can use latex paint for, your wall in your house. I've used latex paints to paint planes before, such as the Tucano in our last build. That was all latex paint. I just used buy the paint samples, thin it down with Windex in this case, most of the time anyhow, about 30% thinned with latex, airbrush it on, spray paint it on, whatever you want. I always spray the paint. I never brush the paint on. So once cured, which is going to be tomorrow morning, because I want it to be an overnight cure. It's right now about 2 in the afternoon. This will be ready to lay up, and we'll lay it up in the morning.